in Oregon is my stakeholder organization. And so I've been involved with the Oregon Community Food Systems Network since it was a twinkle in our eye and we created it. And I try to take what I learned from all of you and bring it back to what we do at OSU. So I have been the lead or the co-lead of the OCFSN Policy Committee from when we birthed it back in 2017. And some of you in this room participated and helped with that. Greg Holmes, I'm looking at you, except I'm not because I only see me right now. And so what we wanted to do together here is bring us all back to this policy space. So before we get going on that, first I want to introduce our new policy committee intern, whose name is Eric Chi. Oh, good. Thank you, Shin. Eric, can you wave? Uh-oh. Well, I don't know who I'm seeing, but I hope you can all see Eric. Oh, good. He's waving, or he was waving. Eric is a recent graduate of the
Hello.
OSU Masters of Public Policy program. And he is going to be helping us implement all of our highly ambitious activities this year. So that's really exciting. Shin, I'm trying to actually see the slide. Okay, great. So let's move to, we can move, this slide is always fun because there are a lot of people who signed up, which makes me really happy that people want to do policy. And then the next slide is for you, Shin.
Yeah, absolutely. So just a couple quick updates. We have a couple events coming up on October 13th. You know, it's leadership recruitment season. So we're going to be hosting an open house with Cardinal team members. And then we are also going to be hosting our third regional gathering in Eugene on the evening of the 13th. So space is limited. So definitely register and you'll get to hang out with Andrew and I.
Yay. Okay, so the way this is going to work, and I hope you had a chance to look at the agenda that we sent out, and also there's a little bit of background material there. This is really the first time we've had a mini convening focused on policy to just try to get everybody energized as we head into next year's 2023 legislative session of the Oregon legislature, but also a whole bunch of other things that we do. So I want to let you know first off that focusing on the legislature is not the only thing that OCFSN does related to public policy. So I wanted to step back and give you the big picture. So the big picture is that we understand as a network that public policy is really important to leverage. It's not the only place we have to achieve our goals, but it is a really important place because it creates opportunities and it also creates and holds on to and digs deeper on constraints. So we have to adjust it, we have to influence it and change it. So how do we do that? Well, OCFSN as a network is not an advocacy, a lobby group that goes to the Capitol with a paid lobbyist for OCFSN. What we do is we recognize that our members and partners have a lot of experience in public policy, and some of them don't have experience in public policy, but they have really important experience that needs to shape public policy. So what we do is we bring our members together to inform, educate, learn from, respectfully challenge, build common cause where we can, and take action together. And we learn from our members with deep policy experience, but also those with less policy experience, but really crucial, relevant experience, again, how we shape policy. It's just bears repeating. And then also underlying all of this is trying to walk OCFSN's equity talk in meaningful, effective, and specific ways relevant to public policy. And that's happening across the network that we are all working toward that. Go ahead, Shin. Right. So we don't have enough time today for me to tell you the full history of the policy committee. And I'm always happy to share that, especially since there are lots of other people here who know that history. But we really got going talking about public policy network in 2017. When we reached out to our members at that time and said, do you work on public policy? And how do you? And some of you took our survey that we sent out, and that gave us a snapshot of the folks involved now and how you work on public policy. And we have done community food systems at the legislature projects since 2019. We have had lots of great trainings and folks coming in and all sorts of stuff, but that would take too long to tell you all of it. We did a policy capacity assessment, a fairly in-depth one. We were surveying people right when the pandemic started, so that was interesting, to identify ways that we could grow together. And you can see a lot of the resources that we've developed together on the policy committee page of the OCFSN website. So I want to leave it at that. And please, happy to answer any questions that folks have. But I would like to move on to what we learned from you all about public policy through the survey. Now, this is 34 individuals, some of them from OCFSN member organizations, some of them not. So it just gives us a snapshot. But we like to ask, how are you involved with public policy? And the main one is tracking policy developments, sharing information, which, you know, a lot of you do. But it was really cool to see that, you know, about 2/3 of the respondents do take public stands on specific public policy issues and do engage directly with lawmakers. So that's a lot of power. And that's a lot of, that's great stuff that we do. You can go to the next one. We'll make this all public. I mean, we'll send this out so you have it all. And then it's understandable that some organizations aren't involved with public policy. The first one about jeopardizing our nonprofit status, that's something that I know a lot of organizations wrestle with. And it's either, you know, there are constraints on what nonprofits can do, but we've tried to do some training and continue to do that around what you are able to do. And in fact, some of our members also provide that kind of training. And sometimes it's most important for your board to understand. We understand neutrality, and we totally understand that a lot of people don't feel they have capacity. So at this mini convening, we really want to talk about, we do have capacity to do something. Let's figure out what thing fits what we have, and then figure out where we want to go next. So this is always interesting to know where people are focused. We do have a sweet spot as a statewide network to work at the state legislative level. We also have had opportunities to work at a statewide level, influencing our public agencies. Administrative policy is important. I am really happy that some of our public agencies have been very involved with OCFSN from the beginning. Amy Gilroy's on this call from Oregon Department of Agriculture. They are a really important partner of ours. Oregon Health Authority has also been. That's valuable too. You can go to the next one. And then, you know, we put some policy topics out there, and you can see here that people who respond to this really want to focus on inclusion, equity, and justice, and economic development, and food security, food access, and nutrition security. And it goes down there. So these are all high priority things for a lot of our members. And again, this is just a snapshot from a certain set of folks who took it. But it shows you a lot of how these spread across our food systems work. And a lot of our food systems work is really nested in a lot of other big picture issues. You know, some of you may find yourself working on the, the earned income tax credit. You know, that doesn't seem to be a food system issue, but it sure does go with a lot of things that come up in the food system. You can do the next one. And then this is a question that we always ask, you know, what should OCFSN be doing? There are some folks who have been saying from the beginning that we really need to become our own advocacy and lobbying group, that we would be able to go and have a shared platform and go to the legislature. Is very complicated, and it always means focusing on a few priorities and neglecting others. So at this point, we really are in a sharing all the information way of doing things and making sure that everyone knows what all the other members are working on. And it does sometimes feel like a fire hose, but they're really, you know, you can pick and choose. So providing with information and creating space. Now, I wanted to put this in because of the results around inclusion, equity, and justice. We have, over the last couple of years in the policy committee, really tried to focus on what does equity mean for us and our work in public policy. And one area that we worked a lot on in 2021 was, what does allyship mean in practice, in policy, in the legislature with bills? And these are just a couple of examples of the food security agenda and the allyship with the farm worker overtime bill that Picun led. So we have a lot of other ways that we're trying to figure out how to do that. And a lot of times it's stepping out of our food system lane and into bigger picture issues. But I just wanted to touch on that as something that we deliberately need to spend time on in a continued way. Okay, so I tried to just give you an overview, and happy to take questions. Really love seeing all of your names and your faces here. What we wanted to shift into is focusing on the community food systems at the 2023 legislature section. So we're going to focus some time on that. And then we are going to focus some time on the federal farm bill, which is another opportunity for folks to get involved. So before I move forward, are there any questions about what we're doing here? We'll give you access to all of the various documents.
And just in terms of the logistics for the last two parts, we'll be doing about 10 minutes of a plenary where Lauren will kind of tee us up, and then we will all move into breakout groups for about 20 minutes. And before those breakout groups, I will send through a shared Google Doc. So we're not going to be able to record each of the different breakout groups, just the plenary. So make sure there's at least one person within your breakout group that is taking notes, so we can kind of capture and gather all this information and then report it back out in a few weeks.
Thanks, Shen. All right, I'm not seeing any hands up and I'm not seeing any questions in the chat. So this is one of my favorite pictures. This is from a Friends of Family Farmers day at the Capitol in Salem. And we do have organizations in our midst, in our network, who spend a lot of focused time on the legislature. Friends of Family Farmers is one of them. Oregon Climate and Agriculture Network is another. Oregon Food Bank is another. A lot of you are here who do that, right? So one of the things that we have done over the last few years and the last few sessions to make sure that folks can know about everybody's priorities across all these areas is that we've created something called Bills to Watch. And way back at the beginning of this presentation, you might remember there was a picture of a whole bunch of pieces of paper stuck on a wall. Well, at our 2019 convening where we focused on policy, we actually printed out 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper with names of bills and put them all over the wall. And it was an amazing diversity of bills. And now what we do is something called Bills to Watch in a slide format. And there are plenty of links in here that we'll send you out, and I think it's on our website as well, on the OCFSN website. But what we do is recreate a slide per bill that you all care about and that your partners care about. It doesn't have to be an OCFSN member organization who's pushing for this. And they can be bills that folks are in favor of and bills that we need to stop. There are always a lot of those. And we try to make it very clear about what's it about, why does it matter to us in community food systems, and where can you learn more? And then this thing down here in the corner that looks really messy is called the matrix. And it has a lot more detail that we build about over the session about the bills. Everyone is welcome to use it, but it does get a little complicated, which is why we created this slide set. At the end of the session, we will create something called Bills We Watched. And that is a summary of the things that we were tracking and then what happened to them. And we make that available to everyone too. And that is also on our website. So I wanted to shift into this question of how OCFSN members can get involved. And this is where I stop talking and you all start talking. And again, it's really crucial that we not sort of sit back and say, well, this requires certain expertise and we can't get involved. We know that policy does require a certain amount of connection, expertise, and learned experience. And we have folks who have been navigating those waters at the state legislature for a long time. And they are really committed to helping all of us get engaged in whatever way we can, right? So I wanted to call on a few folks who just volunteered to say how they get involved during legislative sessions. But then I would love if you want to share for a minute, any of you, about how you have in the past. I would love to hear that as well. So first I wanted to ask Matt Gordon, because Rogue Farm Corps, every year for years, they've been part of the policy committee and they always apologize and say, well, we can't be here all the time, but we really want to know what's going on. And I'm like, this is so not something to apologize for. So this is great. Matt, do you want to share a little bit about how Rogue Farm Corps gets involved?
Sure. So we feel like it's really important for our aspiring farmers and established farmers that we work with in Oregon to understand the importance of policy in creating an environment that will help their farm businesses or future farm businesses thrive and succeed, right? And create sort of a just and fair and ecologically resilient food system. So we don't get super actively involved in advocacy itself, although on occasion we will. But what we have been doing on a regular basis is convening sort of like educational and organizing panels of other folks, other organizations that are really more involved in the direct policy development and advocacy realms, and creating a space for them to all speak about what they're up to and ways that people can get involved. So we do typically one of those in the summer for it's really meant for aspiring farmers, people who are like learning to farm, working on farms, apprenticing, interning, that kind of thing. And then we've done typically one in the winter time over the last couple of years, and that one is more targeted towards established farmers in Oregon. We do occasionally also sign on to support a campaign or a specific piece of legislation when we feel that it's really important and we're really aligned with it. So organizationally sign on and put out ways to get involved on our social media or to our email lists and things like that. So we did that with the Farm Worker Overtime Bill, and we went to organizing meetings and kind of rebroadcast the messaging that Big Coon was bottomlining and putting out into the world. So I think those are some of the ways that we've gotten involved.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you so much. Sarah Miller was also going to share if she has the interweb bandwidth. Sarah, are you here?
Yep, I can start my video.
Thanks, Sarah.
Hi, everybody. Sarah Miller, Northeast Oregon Economic Development District, and my region is located in Baker Union and Wallowa counties, and I live and work out of Wallowa County. So the Economic Development District is a very small organization with a big territory. And we only have 4 staff, a couple of whom are part-time. But we've been around for a long time, since the 1980s. And most of our legislative work has not been in the area of food systems. So in the food systems realm, a lot of what we do is sharing advocacy opportunities that we learn about through this network. And specifically through this policy group and the bills to watch. And so that just gives us an opportunity to say, hey, if you care about this issue, here's the way that you can get involved and support or voice your, take actions that will help move this forward. And one of the reasons we don't do a lot of direct policy work is because we are a public nonprofit, so we're a governmental nonprofit. and our board is appointed by county governments that are in our district. And so it's a little bit challenging for us to get approval for us to advocate specifically for a particular bill. One of the things that we have done with in relation to food system work also is signing on to letters or things like that that might be going forward to indicate multiple organizations advocating for something. And that usually happens when we are it's something we've already discussed with our board, and they know that we have their blessing to go forward with doing that kind of an endorsement. In the areas of our individual development account programs, which are matched savings accounts for low moderate income people, and also with other entrepreneurial development, small business development types of bills, we have participated in legislative days where we've gone together, on the day that a bunch of our collaborative partners are showing up. That's a big effort for us because we have to get to Salem, and we're about as far away from Salem as you can get. And then we've also done, we do contact our representatives and senators oftentimes when there's a bill that impacts those programs. And we will give them a letter, but we also try to get an appointment to speak with them, and we connect with their staff. Their staff are often much more accessible, and we try to maintain those relationships with the staffers throughout the year and go to town halls when we can and stuff like that, just so they remember who we are and we can hear some of the other issues being brought up. And I think a couple of other examples, again, we also would sign on to letters for those types of programs as well. We have also helped with drafting legislation. Right now we're providing some feedback for some legislation regarding workforce housing in our region, which is a critical issue. And then after something is in place, we also participate sometimes in rulemaking. So figuring out how the bill that was passed is going to actually be implemented. And that's super fun. I like doing that.
Thank you,
that's
Sarah.
what I have to share.
Yeah, thank you for bringing up rulemaking. It's one of those things that makes some people go, ugh, but some of us really love it because you guys should actually share what it looks like on the ground. So thank you, Matt and Sarah, for sharing those particular examples. I want to hear from many more of you, and I want to get you in groups so you can talk in more depth about what you do and how. And I just wanted to give you, at this point, we are just starting to think about creating the bills we're watching because we don't know exactly what they are yet. There's a whole process of creating the actual bills. But I asked for a couple of organizations who are regulars at the session to just share some examples. So these are the priorities of Oregon Climate and Agriculture Network. And if you are in a group with Megan, you can hear more about those and share what you know. Let's go to the next one. These are the priorities that Friends of Family Farmers is going to be focused on. They include things that FOF is going to lead on, and also things they're working on in coalition with others, including groups in this network. Go ahead. And then, just some other ones, the Double Up Food Bucks group is going to be going back to the legislature for more funding. I work for Oregon State University, and I put on here that we are going to be pursuing funding for our statewide. That includes extension. The Oregon Organic Coalition will be looking for new organic extension positions and probably some other things. So we're going to be building this list, and we're going to be asking again and again and again, what do you know about? What issues are coming up that you are excited about in a good way and excited about, we have to stop this or change this? So Shin is helping us. We are going to move into breakout groups. And if you've been at a past mini-convening, we have this really nifty shared notes doc where you can capture some notes so we can learn what you were discussing. That really helps us. And here are the two questions. You and your organization in the Oregon legislature, how have you been engaged in the past? And what ideas do you have for the 2023 session about engagement? And then what issues are coming this session? What bills have you heard about related to food systems or other important issues? And Megan, I see you have your hand up.
I do. I just thought it might be helpful for people who aren't real engaged to know when session starts and ends, and that we just had last Friday the deadline to submit legislative concepts, a bill, the very start of first idea for bills to be drafted, and session this next year starts on January 17th and will go until the end of June or early July.
Yes, thank you, Megan. And these are exactly the kind of nuts and bolts details that we will be sharing out with the full network. And the we is all of you. We crowdsource this material and we make sure everyone has it. So Shin, are we ready to go into breakouts?
We will be in a second. So I just dropped into the chat the shared Google Docs. So just want to make sure that everyone has that open, because the second that I put you into a breakout room, you lose visibility of this chat.
Great.
So I'm just going to give everyone a couple minutes. I'm going to make sure.
And the shared notes document has the 2 questions.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have been at a mini convening before and you're in a group with folks who haven't, you can fill them in on how this works. But it's pretty simple.
And I will likely not join any particular room. This way, if folks have any questions, just pop back into the kind of main room to to shoot me a message. All right, I'm going to open up all rooms.
Thank you. And how much time do we have?
We've got, I'll wrote it down somewhere.
About 25 minutes.
Yeah, 25 minutes. And I'll send a note to folks.
Awesome. Ping, 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 ping. There they go.
Oh, there's a couple unassigned. Most of these are still randomized, so I just need to see how the rooms actually look and if people dropped off, and then I will move Eric into an appropriate room. Right.
See, Arlo is signing in under cover of Eddie.
Lauren, are you going to a room or no?
I don't know.
Because you are assigned to one.
I should pop into one. Okay, so you're keeping time?
Yeah, I'll keep time.
I love being in a room with Eddie who's not there. I love being in a room with Eddie when he is there.
I saw Eddie in real life last week.
Awesome.
Yeah. He got to meet favorite cousin Cameron.
Aw.
Cool. I see people in the notes doc. Awesome, awesome.
Yay.
And I have screenshots of folks who joined today. I will save all the chat stuff. And lose it. But don't worry, I can just splice out anything we need to.
Hello, hello, hello.
What up?
Hey. I was just, hello, bright blue shirt man.
What's
Great.
happening?
What's happening is that people have a lot of great ideas. They have issues. I was just surfing around in this shared notes document. Y'all been busy.
Yeah.
Let's just take a few minutes and kind of report back, like how on a scale of 1 to 10, how mind-blowing was that? Was that super, or how relaxed, like, were you just like, wow, that's a 10, or yeah, whatever, we've seen all this before, that's a 1. Fingers, chat. I like it. Good. Good. Hold up those hands so I can see them. Okay, good. Yeah. Awesome. I love it. What I love is that super experienced policy people are like, lots of fingers, so everybody's mind is blown. So I hope that what you were able to chat about were things like, oh my gosh, I have like 4 brain cells next Tuesday for this, but here's the thing I can do with those brain cells. And also the big picture stuff that's going to happen, that if you know about it, you'll be able to slide those brain cells right into it. Does anyone want to, I'm looking at all this stuff, I'm not going to read it to you, but anyone want to raise a hand and just give us a quick, like, cool thing that we talked about?
Farm direct marketing.
Yeah.
That was something we talked about. Healthy
Did
Soils
anyone,
bill.
oh, go ahead. What?
Healthy Soils bill.
Healthy Soils bill. Did anyone on the how we're going to engage front, did anybody learn about some way to engage that you hadn't thought of yet? Nope, we're all really good on engagement. And actually, we're just diving into issues, which is really great. I love it. Okay. So I still see people in this document. I love it. Keep putting things in. And what I'd love to do here is have you take whatever 4-minute break you need. And then we're going to come back for the second half of our show, which is focused on the Farm Bill. So I hope you will all come for it. And then I know, thank you, Sarah. And then we're actually going to do that. And then we're going to do some next steps at the end of the second hour around how are we all going to do this together going forward? And the answer is not, guess what? Eric's in charge of all of it. I'm out, right? Like, he's doing great. I hope he's just paying attention to us. We have to get our interns all revved up, right? So take a quick break and come back in 3 minutes. And do we have Kathy Day in the house?
You do.
Yay! Hi, Kathy.
Hi, how are you, Lauren?
Great. It's great to see you. Oh, Eddie, it was you. I saw Arla Bush in your picture and I was like, who is here under cover of whom?
That's hilarious. Yeah, I'm having some kind of, new staff transition. We probably have Arlo and Teva logging into the executive functions that I normally do. And I think last week I was Lila last week.
I just talked to her this morning.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Interesting story, right?
We'll chat later.
Oh, yes, we will.
Okay. So, I'm going to go get some more water.
It's an extension revolution.
That's true.
hopefully coming to an area near me soon.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Extension for me is no longer Tri-Counties or Corvallis. Extension is every other place that they haven't taken care of. And what's interesting, just as while we're on the topic, MISO, the Minority Enterprise, the Business Development Organization, went statewide. So they're creating. I had a conversation with Kobe, the executive director of MISO, and they said they're interested in opening more offices in Southern and Eastern Oregon, and they want to link it with extension services or the satellites in some kind of way where we can combine forces. So they're open for that, and I'm sort of bypassing all the normal people, and the community organizations that are working statewide are really interested in partnering with us, health and wellness and business development.
I clearly shouldn't have gone to get more tea. I missed some details. Eddie, we'll need to follow up later.
You know, same old stuff, Lauren, same old stuff.
I love it.
MISO, we got a MISO partnership.
Oh.
So we don't, yeah. And they're
Good.
statewide. They're in K Falls. They're a couple other places. So
I told Sydney she's good to go.
yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, everyone, thanks, Eddie. Everyone, we're coming on back. And now we're going federal. Now we're going national, but in a very, what does it mean for Oregon and how can Oregon influence it kind of way? Working on federal stuff, working with Congress, I mean, it's even more daunting than working with the state legislature, right? It's so much bigger and it's so much farther away. But the US Farm Bill is really important. And so I'm curious, let's start out with, what does the Farm Bill mean for you and your organization? Think about it for a second, put that in the chat. Are there programs that you've used or have directed the farmers or other communities you work with toward? Because we're going to get into with National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition. Thank you, Kathy Day, for being here. And with Megan Kemple, Oregon Climate and Agriculture Network, an organization based in Oregon, but one very engaged in the federal Farm Bill. We're going to get into sort of an overview and opportunities for engagement. And then we are going to dive into one part of what's coming in the Farm Bill. There are so many other pieces of this thing, but we don't have 12 hours today. And so what we're going to do is we're going to talk about one piece and set that up for, if you would like to be involved in an OCFSN ongoing dialogue conversation around the Farm Bill, we can facilitate that. So think about that, and we'll be following up, I think, with a Zoom poll on this very convening and after. So with that, I'm seeing Eddie put in here Black Farm Recovery, BFRDP, Black Beginning Farmer Rancher Development Program grant, veterans, underrepresented. A lot of you have grants that were authorized by and funded by the Farm Bill. So I'm going to hand it off to Kathy and Megan to go forward.
All right. Thanks, Lauren.
First, Kathy. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Megan. So I'm Kathy Day. I'm the Climate Policy Coordinator with the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition. And take us to the next slide. I'm going to talk to you for these few minutes about the Farm Bill itself, a little bit about the Agriculture Resilience Act, and the timeline for the Farm Bill. So we can go to the next slide. One of the things that we always highlight in talking about the Farm Bill at NSAC is the history upon which it's based. So we give a reminder that the Farm Bill and the American agricultural system were built upon a history of stolen indigenous land and stolen African labor. And that's important because the original Farm Bill was built upon these things. It was created with an intentional exclusion of domestic workers and farm workers from social programs, and with very intentional framing up of some of the ways that USDA worked that excluded indigenous and Black farmers from a lot of programs. And those have influenced things up until today. So we always start from that framing because it's important to keep in mind that we need to keep pushing on policy in that regard going forward. So on the next slide, we can look at what the Farm Bill is a bit more generally. It's the single biggest piece of US federal food and farm policy. It's written and passed about every 5 years. The current Farm Bill expires next September 30th, 2023. And so ideally, a new Farm Bill is passed before the previous Farm Bill expires. Doesn't always happen, but that is the ideal. And it includes a lot of different programs, from farm programs, nutrition support, a whole wide variety of things. And we're going to dig a little bit more into those on the next slide. So first, if you look at this breakdown of the funding, and this is the funding from the 2018 Farm Bill, you see very quickly that nutrition takes up more than 3/4 of the funding. And that's an important thing to keep in mind, because there are specific groups that tend to advocate in those spaces, and NSAC is not one of those groups. We do not tend to work in the nutrition space. Rather, we tend to work in that other quarter of the pie. So crop insurance, commodities, conservation, and that little black slice is one of the really important pieces for our advocacy, but all of those areas in the smaller quarter are important for us. And that horticulture section, for example, in the black slice, that includes things like organic certification that are important to us. The rural development piece includes things like the Rural Energy for America program, also something that NSAC advocates on. Credit, of course, is important for many of our farmers and is a key piece of some of our policy work on this end. So that black slice, despite being small, is very important. But the biggest places that we advocate otherwise are probably the blue and the red, so the crop insurance and the conservation piece, and trying to shape those up so that they work for small and mid-scale farmers. And I'm going to run you through on the next slide each of the titles. So the commodity title covers programs like price and income support for farmers who raise those big commodities: corn, soybeans, wheat, rice. It also covers dairy and sugar. It also includes agricultural disaster assistance, and so that may end up being a key point of discussion in the next Farm Bill. Conservation is Title II, so that covers things that help farmers implement natural resource conservation efforts, working lands, pasture and cropland, as well as the land retirement and the easement programs, things like the Agricultural Conservation Easement Program. Title III is Trade, so that's food export subsidy programs, international food aid programs, anything related to trade. Title IV is Nutrition, and so as I mentioned on the previous slide, that is a really substantial portion of the funding, but again, not a place where we tend to advocate a lot, but that is where you get supplemental nutrition assistance, or SNAP. Title V is Credit, so that covers the federal loan programs designed to help farmers access financial credit. That's direct loans, it's guaranteed loans, so things that people are accessing through the Farm Service Agency, through Farm Credit, as well as through banks with those guarantees. And then Title VI is Rural Development, so programs like those that foster economic growth, offer business and community development, and that help with rural housing and infrastructure as well. The Title VII, that's one of the areas in which I work along with that Title II, Conservation. So the research, extension, and related matters, which is a variety of things. So that includes things like the Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education Program, for example, that we tend to focus on a lot because it offers so many opportunities for farmers to be directly involved in research. But it covers all kinds of areas of research related to agriculture. And then Title VIII is Forestry, another one we don't tend to work a lot here on the NSAC end, but anything that is forest-specific conservation and helps farmers and communities to steward their forest ecosystems. Title IX is Energy. That's things for growing and processing crops for biofuel, for example. So that's a key one for Midwestern states. It helps farmers, ranchers, and business owners install renewable energy systems and support research related to energy. Title X then is Horticulture. So that covers farmers market and local food programs, research and infrastructure for fruits, vegetables, horticultural crops, and organic farming and certification programs. So that's another key one for NSAC. And then Title XI is crop insurance. So that includes premium subsidies to farmers and premium subsidies to the insurance companies who provide that federal crop insurance support. And it also helps to provide the funding for the risk management agency itself and giving it the authority to make new decisions and do new research about what kinds of insurance policies will work. And then Title XII is miscellaneous, it's a bit of a catch-all. The current title brings together 6 advocacy and outreach areas. So that includes the beginning socially disadvantaged and veteran farmers and ranchers work, like 2501 program, as a lot of you probably know it, agriculture, labor safety, workforce development, livestock health. So it's a kind of a mishmash of different things. But as we go on to the next slide, one of the key things to keep in mind is that with the Farm Bill being such a huge piece of legislation, the 2018 version was over 500 pages, it is important for members of Congress to advocate at something a little bit more specific than the whole Farm Bill level. So it tends to be that over that year, 2 years, 3 years before the Farm Bill passes, they will be implementing what are called marker bills. And these are bills that are introduced into Congress. They are garnering support right along the way from folks in Congress. So the Agricultural Resilience Act, as I have as an example here, is getting lots and lots of members of Congress to sign on to help support it. But it's being introduced and supported in Congress without the expectation that it will be passed as a bill by itself. Instead, the expectation is that the Act, the Agricultural Resilience Act, and similar marker bills are going to become part of that omnibus legislation that is the Farm Bill. And so it's very much something that is a marker for an idea rather than a bill to be passed by Congress, which is why it has that name, marker bill. And the Agriculture Resilience Act, as an example, is, and we're going to walk through it a little bit, but it is a farmer-driven, science-based roadmap for reaching net zero greenhouse gas emissions in U.S. agriculture by the year 2040. And you can see there's been a lot of work on this already. This is the Community Alliance for Food and Farming in California, advocating for the bill themselves. So let's go to the next slide and dig into this act a little bit further. So the Agriculture Resilience Act, also broken down by titles, it is addressing a whole variety of things across the Farm Bill. So some marker bills are quite narrow. They might be even 3 or 4 pages long or even shorter and just addressed one particular provision or one particular idea. For example, introducing climate bundles into the Conservation Stewardship Program is one bill that is out there, 3 or 4 pages long. Agriculture Resilience Act is a very long piece of legislation. So it covers a lot of different things, but all of it is geared at that set of goals in its first title of reducing agricultural greenhouse gas emissions to net zero by 2040. And so what that means is that throughout each of the titles, there's a focus on greenhouse gas mitigation, but there is also some focus on adaptation or resilience for farms. So there's some attempt to think through how both of those pieces affect farmers, but the main goal is that net zero by 2040. So if we look at Title II, for example, that creates more research focus on climate. And it does that by looking at a whole array of research programs. So one of them is the Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education Program. It gives it a specific climate mitigation focus within that program. Same thing for several other major programs that are kind of the overarching top-level grant programs for USDA. Gives them a research focus specific to climate. But also it has a couple of programs that it just advances some extra support for, like the climate hubs that don't currently have congressional authorization, but just get congressional appropriations on an annual basis. They get some extra support through this bill, and they get permanent authorization and mandatory funding assigned to them within the bill. Similarly for the long-term agroecological research site. So those are things that are very supportive not only of research for helping farmers with climate, but also are supporting huge extension efforts to farmers. Title III, same thing. We're looking at the conservation programs. We're looking at the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, or EQIP, the Conservation Stewardship Program, or CSP, as well as a state soil health assistance program. All of those are written in a way that is increasing their focus on greenhouse gas mitigation. Then Title IV it's another one of those sort of mishmash titles like the miscellaneous title in the Farm Bill. It has marketing, it has easements, it has organic cost share. And in the case of the organic cost share, that's just making sure we get that support for organic cost share in the Farm Bill. It's not necessarily that climate directed, it's just we need to make sure that cost share support is there. And that's an a priority of Representative Pingree, whose bill this was originally and still is. And so that's an important piece, but we do also see it as important to addressing climate change. Market and easements, each of those do have a specific climate focus within them, and trying to think about how to better market, for example, the kinds of crops that people are incorporating into the rotations. Like in the Midwest, we can think about small grains folks are putting in to increase the diversity of their rotations. That may look quite different to you in Oregon, especially those with kind of those small mid-scale operations who are doing a lot of organic farming, probably already doing a lot of cover crops and that sort of thing. And so marketing some of the new crops in there would also be something that would come out of the ARA. And then Title V, pasture-based livestock, still focused on climate, but from the perspective of the recognition that there's a lot of research at this point that suggests that well-managed grazing systems, those that have a lot of care and thought to how animals are grazed within the system, that are carefully fenced, where farmers are taking the time to move animals around on a regular basis, that those systems reduce greenhouse gas emissions and therefore are an advantage over systems where animals are more concentrated. And so that pasture-based livestock title is specifically seen as climate change focused because of the kind of focus on pasture-based livestock through intensive management.
Hey, Kathy.
Yeah.
I don't think you need to go through each of the remaining ones. I think you can just, if you don't mind, just give us a high level, go back to the high level and share kind of the timeline. That'd be great.
Timeline for the farm bill?
Farm bill and
okay.
Yeah, I think we're good here with the detail.
All right, let's jump on to the next slide then. All right, so the timeline for the farm bill, it's already started. The marker bills are part of the beginning of that, but other things that the folks in the House and the Senate have been doing on this end in this year is they've been holding hearings and listening sessions on farm bill topics. There have been a few listening sessions out in the districts, but by and large, the vast majority of what they've done is hold hearings here in DC. And they've included things like a recent hearing on the conservation title, for example. But going into January, we're going into a new Congress. We'll be following up on an election whose outcome is yet to be determined. And so we'll see the new Congress sworn in January. We will see the Senate Agriculture Committee start drafting the Farm Bill. And their plan is starting out in January as soon as they can. They're going to be drafting. We'll be seeing a little bit of twist in what exactly they're doing because they're going to be working based on the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed a couple of months ago. That's going to change quite a bit of what the conservation title likely looks like, but we're not sure exactly what direction that'll go yet. And at the same time as we've got this new Congress, we've got folks starting to draft the Farm Bill. There also is a need to reintroduce those marker bills. Since it's a new Congress, the marker bills have to be reintroduced. And so things like the Agricultural Resilience Act, for example, are going to need reintroduction in January. From there, the process is going to look a lot like the diagram over on the left. So we've got both House and Senate in their agriculture committees. They're going to be drafting the bill and trying to figure out what they in each of their committees want the bill to look like. And at some point, they will pass it out of committee. And the House, full House, the Senate on the full Senate will vote on the floor on whether they think that they have a bill that they want to carry forward. And in theory, and this isn't exactly how it's gone in the last couple of farm bills, but in theory, from there, the bill would go to a conference committee with members of both the House and the Senate talking about what they want the final bill to look like. It has happened a bit more behind closed doors even than that in the last couple of farm bills, more individuals and small groups talking to one another individually to kind of get to a version of the bill that both houses could agree on. But some version of agreement will come out of that will go back then to the House and Senate, and each will vote on the final version of the bill. And once there's a final agreed upon version that both vote on and send forward, that will go to the president for signing. So what exactly the timeline looks like in there between February and September is uncertain. It depends on a lot of factors. However, we do very much hope and will be advocating for getting a farm bill finished before September 30th, because as I mentioned, that is when the current farm bill expires, and some programs will actually end if the farm bill expires without a new farm bill having been passed. So I'm glad to take questions, but that's what I have for y'all. So thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. That was amazing overview of the Farm Bill timeline provisions, all in 15 minutes. Excellent. I'm gonna give, this is Megan from Oregon Climate and Ag Network, and I just wanna double down on something that Kathy shared. Kathy shared about the Agriculture Resilience Act, which is ORCAN really feels is a tremendous roadmap for how the next Farm Bill can address climate change and get our country to net zero agricultural emissions, and while supporting farmer livelihoods. And one provision of the Ag Resilience Act that Kathy mentioned that ORCAN is really excited about is the creation of grants to states to incentivize adoption of soil health practices on farms and ranches. So soil health grants coming from the state. And Oregon, specifically Oregon Department of Ag, is really well positioned right now to take advantage of those grants. And the grant funding could provide some very real opportunities for Oregon's farmers and ranchers. And we're hoping to advance soil health policy in the next legislative session. And if we are successful, we'll be even better positioned as a state to receive that funding. So for those of you who are interested in following that, just get in touch with me if you're not already engaged with ORCAN's policy work, and I'll share out opportunities to contact your members of Congress to encourage I probably will share this out through OCFSN actually after this, or through this, the folks who are registered here. I'll share out an opportunity to contact your members of Congress to encourage their support for the Ag Resilience Act. And we may also be circulating a farmer sign-on letter in support of the ARA, and would love your help getting farmer sign-ons as well, for those of you who are interested in supporting that. There.
Wow. That was a lot, and that was great. And I saw some awesome stuff being put in the chat. Really great specific questions, and also great points about where the funding comes from. I think this is a really important point that Amy mentioned. I know for years I heard people yelling at ODA for doing all this work on export markets and not doing enough on local and regional market development. And the fact is that all the money for market development comes from the feds, and they care about export markets. So it's a changing the agency from inside, of course, which Amy is helping us do, but it's also where's the funding for it? And we're seeing some changes, but there need to be more. So that's a great example. And then Sarah raises a great example about these specific crop, or risk management products that are being used for purposes that they weren't intended for and that are causing damage. So thanks for sharing those things. We would like to get you into breakout groups to discuss, similarly to the previous one, how has your organization engaged on Farm Bill reauthorization in the past? And how are you hoping to engage in the year ahead? And I want to repeat that there are many, many other parts of the Farm Bill, as Kathy said, and we have other member organizations who are really working on that. And I put a little note from Erin Poplack from Food Corps into your the agenda for today's mini-convening, so you could see sort of where they're coming from. Christina Stucker-Gassi from NCAP, Northwest Coalition for Alternatives to Pesticides. Am I getting that right, Christina? I probably am not, because my brain is old. Center, not coalition, center. Thank you. And Christina has been working with NSAC for a long time on how NSAC is advancing racial equity in their Farm Bill advocacy work, and also some work on the research, education, and extension title. So there are lots of things we can address. And so what we'll do is Shin will put us in breakouts for, let's see, about, what did I say, 15 minutes? 15 minutes, yeah, with those two questions. And you know the drill. And if you're new to this section and didn't come to the first one, watch what others around you are doing.
All right, all the rooms have opened. And if there are any questions, I will be in the main room. So just come back and give me a shout.
Thank you, Kathy and Megan.
Kathy, people were chiming in with all the ways that they could see their programs reflected in as you're going through the different titles. So that was really helpful to kind of be rattling those off.
Great.
Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, bye, Kathy.
Shannon,
Yeah,
would you mind helping me get into a room? Was I assigned one?
I am.
Here it goes.
I'll move folks over.
And Kathy, we have you here for like another 15 minutes or so, right?
Yep. Would you like me to jump into the breakout room?
I think so. I mean, I think that you may have to encourage folks not to just say, and tell us about this and tell us about that and make them talk. And if
Sure.
they make you talk too much, maybe you'll say, I'm leaving now, but you know how to handle it.
Sure. Yeah, no problem.
Thanks, Kathy.
You're welcome.
All right, I think everyone in here should also be assigned.
Eric must have stepped away for a second.
Yeah. All right, clock starts 15 minutes.
Awesome. That people need. Oh, there's the recording. So good thing I didn't say anything useful before that. So anyone have anything they want to share? Lots of
I would
great.
be interested in talking about what would be the most useful strategy for this group, knowing that our senators are likely sympathetic to all of these issues. But our House representative probably is not, but Megan has some words.
Go ahead, Megan. Thank you, Christy.
We recognized in our breakout that Senator Merkley sits on the Senate Appropriations Subcommittee on Agriculture, and appropriations means money. So he helps to allocate funding to these programs and will be doing so through Farm Bill, as far as I understand. And so one thing that we can do is, we know they're supportive, we know Merkley's supportive, we know Wyden is supportive of sustainable ag. Congressman Blumenauer is over the top supportive of sustainable ag. He's a champion of sustainable ag issues. He's already sponsored the Ag Resilience Act, for example. But one thing we can do is let them know when they are, when our organization or our community that we represent or advocate for is benefiting from these federal programs. We can give them we can send them a message and say, you know, you're supportive. Thanks so much for all your support for sustainable ag. And I'll just give you an example. I just wrote to our members of Congress recently and said, no, you're looking at appropriations for sustainable ag research and education, the SARE grants. And our organization has benefited for 2 years from a grant that helped us put on the Train the Trainer. Here's what we accomplished with that funding. And please do all you can to reauthorize that funding or increase the pool of funding available. It makes a difference in Oregon. So just giving them really concrete examples. You were chiming in with ways that your community benefits from these funds. And so letting them know so they have more, I hate to use the word, ammunition. They have more
Valuable information to support their cause.
Exactly. Support what they are advocating for and to help them lift those pieces up that really do make a difference here in Oregon for us.
Thanks, Megan. Thanks for asking that question, Christy. Anything else that comes up? I'm looking, there's just a lot of great stuff here in the notes. I think we talked about, I was invited into the OCFSN Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion working group committee last week, I guess, and we were chatting a little bit about engagement strategies and how it can feel like it's a really exclusive kind of place, and that policy engagement, especially at the federal level, requires a very tight script, and you got to wear the power suit and you got to walk in and say in all these specific ways. And one of the folks in that committee was talking about how working with a particular coalition to support their work and their advocacy really put storytelling first. And it was, you know, telling a story about your farm and your experience and your community. And I was reflecting on that and thinking, well, that's what everybody does all the time. Every lobbyist who goes and talks to Congress tells a story. They tell a particular story, right? So we shouldn't think that storytelling is somehow mushy and not practical. It's actually what changes things. So it's more about getting folks to believe that their story really does matter and that you can tell it in a different way from what you think is going on in those offices. So you all clearly have, and I'm looking at the notes here, have a lot of different stories of your own or of the communities you work with. Unless anyone else has something to share or a question to ask, I'm going to jump into the wrap up and next steps, and then folks can have some non-Zoom time for a little bit. I hope some of us are going to jump right into the next thing. The next steps here, I think we accomplished our goal of getting all y'all together, getting us together to talk about these different ways where we're going to be shaping, influencing, changing public policy, some of the ways and issues that we're going to be looking at, and some of the ways we're going to engage. Right. And that some of us have done it a while and some of us haven't, but we're all in this community and we're going to help each other do it. So a next step with that is we are going to do one more and perhaps two more mini convenings like this before the legislature really gets going in early 2023. The first one is the end of November, November 30th. If we haven't sent a save the date yet, we will, where with help from Friends of Family Farmers, we are going to recognize that we'll have a new governor and a new legislature, a lot of new faces, a lot of turnover. And we're going to have to say, what is our legislature? Who are they? And what might that mean for the issues we care about? And clearly, we are not going to have very many definitive answers. Well, we might have some, but we should really be thinking about who is our legislature and who is our governor and what does that mean for our work individually and together. So that will be on November 30th. And then we're hoping to do another mini convening in the beginning stages of the legislature. Sometimes it makes most sense after it starts okay, what's out on the playing field? What bills are going on? What member is tracking what, so that we can all sort of share what's up and how to stay more up to date, either through those member organizations or as a group. So we'll do that in early 2023. And then as far as how we communicate, and we're going to put all of this in notes that we send out, we have had a policy committee email list since 2017. It's been great. And it's time to retire it. Because number one, it's really out of date. There's a lot of people still on that list who haven't been doing policy work or have moved or whatever. And the other thing is we really want to get out of this committee does that work. The whole network can do this work. And so we're going to be shifting how we communicate. We're going to be sending, in some ways, the whole network is the policy committee in the way of sharing information about what's going on with policy issues and engagement strategies. So we will have stuff going out through the newsletter, and that will be an opportunity for you to share on a biweekly basis, meaning twice a month, not twice a week. We know that when we're in the middle of a legislative session, things are really fast moving all the time. OCFSN is not going to be able to host the kind of daily updates that people often need, but we definitely are willing to host meetings if folks want to do that, to share information. And we also are up for starting a temporary during the legislature listserv where you all can share information. We're going to have some polls to get your sense on that, and we'll follow up. in the Farm Bill section just now, some of you may have thought, oh, I'd like to get involved with this. And I know a few member organizations are willing to help convene that conversation. So there could be a focus on the Farm Bill meetings, meeting series. I don't know how that conversation is going to go. It's up to y'all. So that's how we're planning to work as a policy, as a network that works on policy as one of our strategies. We will be looking for some folks who want to be part of a new policy committee that is focused on the big picture of how we do our work, and then all the particular activities and approaches. It's not just information about the legislature or just information about the Farm Bill. We want it to be a group that's actively thinking about how we can best achieve our big picture goal. So think about that if you're interested in being part of that. Andrew, did we have polls set up for folks?
Yeah, we have one for the Farm Bill.
So we just wanted to start out with, first of all, I'm happy to answer any questions about any of that. I know it's a lot of info right at the end of a very busy and dense 2 hours, but we'll be sharing that out with the summary notes. But we wanted to start with a little initial poll to see, are you interested in being part of a conversation around the Farm Bill? So Andrew's going to go. And you should be able to, yeah, there you go. So we'll give that a few minutes. We have about 37 people on this. Maybe 35 of which could answer it. Well, that's pretty good. 13, at least 13 people are interested, and another 15 might. Okay, well, that those of you, Megan and others who work on Farm Bill stuff, you know who you are. We'll put our heads together and figure out how we can pull folks together. Andrew, do we have a second poll? Or is that the only one?
I'm forgetting, and I'm no longer able to access those.
Don't worry about it.
Can see it. I think there's one more, but it's more general.
Okay.
I am still here. I am. Give me one sec. All right. So the second poll, the question is, should OCFSN hold bi-weekly community food systems conversation in the 2023 legislature meetings during the session? So
basically, if we had meetings twice a month at a set time, would you want to show up for that meeting to share information about your priorities at the legislature, or to hear about priorities at the legislature? And we are going to do everything we can to keep these meetings the right balance of in-depth information, but also accessible to folks who are new to this. So keep thinking about it. We'll give you another second. Kathy hopped off. Thank you, Kathy Day. Thank you, Megan, for working that out with her. All right, so folks are interested. Now, you know full well that we will never find a time that works for everyone, but what we're going to do is try to set a regular time and see what we can do. Okay, well, with that, I would like to take the last few minutes just to say thank you for being here and thank you for sharing with each other. And I hope that in your small groups, you actually learned some things or were able to share some things that others in your group didn't know about, and build some connections for later. Does anyone have any comments to take us out? Like, how are you feeling about this? Does public policy feel less weird and scary? Did it never feel weird and scary? Give me some adjectives.
and if it still feels weird and scary, let us know.
If public policy were a cartoon character, what would it be?
Okay, Diego, demystified. Cool. Thank you.
Okay. Keep it
Alright.
coming in. And if you want to, as we say in Zoom land, have the last, have 7 minutes back in your life, go use it. Go use all those 7 minutes in a big, bold way. Thanks everyone for being here, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shin. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren, for facilitating.
That was great.
Chat saved. Have a great rest of your week, y'all.
Thank you. Bye.